Man, Benson is too freaking good. I could be playing that all day. I mean, I literally have. But welcome to George Benson's Beauteracious Bebop lines. Today we are going to look at 4 awesome examples of how Benson uses bebop chromaticism, some bebop approaches, bebop language, and gets into these really long, really great sounding bebop lines, and also how he combines them with other ideas, other blues ideas, pentatonic ideas, arpeggios, etc. So we will cut right to the chase. The first example we're looking at is, again, from this solo on So What. We looked into this solo a bit last week as well, focused on pentatonic ideas. So if you haven't seen that video, you can check that here. But today we're focusing on the chromaticism that he uses. So the first example is this. I'll play it slow and I'll play it fast. Okay, so let's break it down. Starting off, we have this chromaticism that Benson uses a lot, which I like to think of as just every one of your fingers descending chromaticism. So we descend 4 notes chromatically, and like I said, Benson uses that in a bunch. A lot of my previous Benson examples, he's using that. And so the way I like to think about it in this case, since we're playing over So What and D minor, we can do that starting on the 4th. And really you can do that anywhere where your starting note is within your scale and your ending note, becoming your target note, is also in the scale. So in this case, G and E both fit nicely over D minor. So what does that mean? It means we could also do it starting on D, going to B, because D is our root and B is our 6th. Instead of doing that, though, Benson does this. He goes just 3 notes on that string, and then 2 notes, the A, G. And here we have a 3-note approach. We've looked at this before in some of my other previous bebop examples, and I actually have an entire new book, which will be at a 20% discount for the first 100 people. You guys can see that information in the link below. This is all about bebop scales for dominant chords, different 3-note approaches for dominant 7 chords. A lot of great examples there on how to use bebop scales, arpeggios, the approaches, and it's really useful if you're wanting to develop some jazz language over a blues. So anyways, that you can get in the description below. Last time, the first 100 people, 20% off discount, sold out within basically less than a week. So if you're interested, you want to get that right now. All right, so after that, we are enclosing and targeting this E. So we go from that G, F, and then walking up to the E, which is cool because instead of targeting a chord tone, Benson's really targeting like the 9th here. But then he uses that 9th to play an E7 arpeggio, which is kind of weird because we would normally think of E7 fitting over D minor, but it works because, like I said in the last week's lesson, we can use A minor over D minor, and that sounds good. So because A minor works, we can do a 5 of that chord, a tension resolving to A minor. The 5 of A minor is E7. So that's what Benson does. He does E7 going into this C and A, which is target. It's basically outlining an A minor chord. So up until that point, we have standard dominant 7 arpeggio. And then he transitions into kind of a D blues and D minor pentatonic to end the phrase, switching into a lower position, and all of that, which I talked about in the last lesson. So that is this first example. Coming up next, we have another example, which is another really great long bebop line. Again, I'll play it slow, and then I'll play it fast for you. So for this one, we are still using that 5-to-1 idea, the idea that we can play a dominant 5 sound when we have a 1 chord and imply that tension and then resolve, but this time with D minor. So we're starting off with an A7 type of sound, A7 flat 9 in this case, with this starting line. And again, these are landing a lot of chord tones on downbeats, like we talk about with our bebop scales. Here we have a very standard dominant type of pattern, kind of diminished pattern to that A. And then once we get to that F, that's our resolution really. But he continues with this A major triad. And then sliding down to B natural. When we get to that B natural, that's a sign that we're out of this A7 flat 9 sound and we're playing more of over this like D minor 6 sound, which is what he does. He's using this B minor 7 flat 5, or you could think about it like a D minor 6 arpeggio. 2 octaves, and then ending with right there, ending the phrase on the minor 7th. And I point that out just because in our last example, he also uses the minor 7th, and I think it's a good thing to note when we're looking at different phrases that we're trying to learn from. What notes are these guys starting with? What notes are they ending with? Because a lot of times when we're improvising, one of the things I see a lot of my students doing is starting and ending their phrases on the same chord tone. So whether that's a root if you're a beginner, or even if you're not, maybe it's a third or fifth, some of the chord tones. And so it's interesting to see where Benson is ending and how is he leaving that phrase to set himself up for the next one. So anyways, I see a lot of times he uses that minor 7th to end the phrase because it doesn't feel fully resolved, but it's not that strong of a tension. Immediately after that, we have our next example, example 3. And this one's cool because it's another sound he's using over D minor, this time focused on C major. And he starts off with this little pattern, which normally we think of from like a G altered standpoint as like a resolution to C major, this A flat, G, F, E. And again, that's what Benson's doing. He has a 5 sound into C major, and then he's really focused on this C major 7 arpeggio, C major 7 sound over D minor, this same section of So What with D minor. So again, I'll play it slow and then fast, and then we have one more example after that, so you're going to want to stick around. So like I said, we start off with this little descending pattern into the E, and then we have this little G and D, this E, G, D. It's right off the bat reminding me of something that Dan Wilson talks about in his course, this vertical thinking. You guys can also get on the waiting list with that below. I wasn't trying to plug that, it just came to my mind. That course is actually coming out very shortly as well. So anyways, he plays that G and D, and then we have a very straightforward C major 7 arpeggio up to there, and then a descending with like up sweeps with that triplet pattern, and then A, D, and this time he's ending on the 9th. That phrase I like a lot. Really, I would visualize it over this C major 7 if you're not familiar with how I think about phrases and connecting them to the surrounding chords, what I call the master line concept. All right, and our last phrase that we're going to look at here for bebop patterns with Benson, this is a part of a line he does over E flat minor 7. It sounds like this. Okay, so what's going on here? To me, this is a variation of a very classic way of descending chromatically, something we've seen before of that phrase we're going and adding in these little filler notes. And then instead of going from there, Benson in this case is doing it with this pull off and then also going to that note. So it's just like a variation on that idea. So you have that idea. Again, another 3-note approach, targeting C. So here you could think about that C as the 6th for E flat minor. I like to think about it as if it's a 2-5, like it's E flat minor and A flat 7, and he's targeting the 3rd of A flat 7. But either way, it's essentially the same. You're targeting that C. And then after that, just continuing with this E flat minor pentatonic idea. Throwing in that F there, but essentially like an E flat minor pentatonic shape. So that's our last example. Again, check out the new Master Dominant Bebop Scales ebook that I came up with. It's over 100 pages. It's got a lot of great material. You can check out everything below. It is 20% off for the first 100 people to get it. And like I said, last time that sold out within a few days. So I have more people now, more subscribers. So I'm expecting it to do that as well. Again, I appreciate everyone's support. Your support of these books and all of that is what allows me to do this and spend most of my week. I spend about 3 to 4 days each week getting content for you guys. Also coordinating with John's Story to get you guys more lessons on Wednesday, which you guys have been appreciating and John's been loving doing. So thanks for checking those out as well. I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks.